Hey, Seth David here from the world famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, and I'm excited to bring you the first edition of Ask Nerd. Some of these questions I'm going to cover in this video are a bit dated because they were asked when I was first setting the form up, but I wanted to get the answers in anyway, just to make sure that I did address them. But first, in case you're wondering what I'm even talking about, when you're on our website, and especially if you head over into the Guide to the Galaxy, right, which is under Community, you might be reviewing one of our blog articles, or this is the replay of a recent webinar that we did, right? And you could be reviewing this and going through the write-up, watching the video, and suddenly a question pops up. So you pause the video, and you come right over here and click where it says Ask Nerd. And that's exactly what this form is designed for. Now, the other thing that this form is designed for, and let me just reset that, is for the idea is that I'm going to answer these questions as I'm about to do now in a recorded video like this one live. So my intention is that if you provide the information, I'll mention you by name. I'll link to your website if you've provided that address. If for any reason you want to keep your information private, make sure you indicate as much in the Ask Nerd Here box that you can see. Best place to do it is right at the top, so I definitely see it. You can just say something like, hey, please keep my information private, answer it anonymously, and I'm happy to do that. If you don't tell me that, I'm going to assume it's okay to share who you are and the fact that it's your question. And again, if provided, I'll link back to your company website and mention you and your company by name. So that's what this form is designed for. It's designed to be really like a resource, a tool to use while you're reviewing any of our content so that you can get additional supplemental questions answered. So with that, I want to get to the first question that was asked 5 months ago. This one's from Jeannie Crook, who's been a member of 97 and Up for quite some time. I think she's actually one of the original members. In fact, I'm certain that she is. And she asked, I'm thinking of upgrading my Google Pixel 2 XL phone. She says, I know, about time, right? I think you're a Pixel user. What are your thoughts on Pixel versus Samsung versus iPhone? And so let me cover the last one first. iPhone I have zero experience with. I'm not a Mac user, not an iPhone user, so I really can't speak to that. I have been an Android user from day one since there was Android, and I've loved it, and I've felt no need to switch. That said, Samsung versus Pixel. Samsung is what I used for a long time until Pixel came out. And everything I was reading about the Pixel was that they just had a really solid operating system. The engineering on it was written up as being amazing, and that they were powerful. They could process things quickly and so on. So, and me being generally kind of a Google and Android fan, it didn't take much for me to try it out. A few articles written very favorably comparing Pixel to Samsung specifically, and I was easily convinced to at least try it. Since that time, and I had the very first Pixel that came out, and now I have the Pixel 6 XL Pro or something like that. I love it. One thing I don't love, but I don't know if this is I don't think it's a Pixel issue. It's probably more of an Android issue, and I may be dating myself when I say this, but I sort of hate the gestures thing because many of the kinds of gestures that they have just overlap. So I frequently find I'm trying to do one thing and I end up doing something else by accident. And for me, it's just annoying, right? But there's probably not much you can do about it, except like in my case, I just have to slow down a little when I'm making these gestures. But I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll record for a couple minutes here right on my mobile and cut this into the video. So I've got this up. And if I swipe up from somewhere in the middle of my screen, it brings up all of my apps. No big deal. But if I want to see my recently open applications, because I want to be able to quickly switch between them, it's also a swipe up, but I have to do it from the bottom. So as you can see when I do that now, it brings up Instagram because I just had that open very recently, right? And do that again from the bottom, and I can switch, or I can just minimize by swiping up again from the very bottom. So that it's the overlapping gestures that drives me crazy, but I'm guessing that's going to be the case with every phone now, because in general, these operating systems have moved more and more in the direction of having you use these kind of gestures to access different screens or things, whatever you want to call them, on your mobile device. So again, I'm not sure there's much you could do about that, but it sort of drives me crazy. So the next thing, though, that I want to discuss here, which I think is interesting, is because I was sort of annoyed about this whole gesture thing, especially with the latest version of Android, with the most recent Pixel devices, I I started researching, saying, well, maybe I'll go back to Samsung. I don't know, maybe Samsung's better. But the truth is, I recently used a Samsung tablet, and I wasn't in love. I wasn't in love with the way it worked, the functioning, what have you. Certainly not inspired by that experience to go try their mobile phones again. But in my course of reading and researching and trying to see if there were reviews that said they were better, I started noticing that Samsung seemed to be among the first, if not the first, to start coming out with foldable mobile devices. And that intrigued me. I just thought it was cool. But the more I read about them, the more I got the impression that it was cool tech and it would get there, but it's not there yet, that these phones lacked a lot of the sort of computing power that you really needed them to have to be able to do things quickly, efficiently, and so on. So frankly, when I read a lot of the articles that I read about them, I got a little bit scared off, and I said, okay, I'm going to stick with the Google Pixel for now. But along the way, I stumbled on an article on Wired.com that talked about Lenovo's foldable laptop. It's called the X1 Fold. So I got this. Now, I want to be very clear and upfront. This is not a primary device. If you need a laptop and you need it to be your primary, you're not going to get a Lenovo Fold. You're going to get a Lenovo ThinkPad, which is what I use. It's very powerful. My ThinkPad laptop is more powerful than most people's desktops are. It's got like 8 processors in it or something crazy like that. Not something crazy like that. It actually has 8 processors. But I love the idea of the foldable technology because it's convenient, it's compact, it's small when you want it to be, and it's big when you need it to be big, right? So just so you can see, when I unfold it, just partially, I've got half the screen here, and I've got a keyboard. This is extra. You buy it. It works with the Lenovo Fold, and it magnetically attaches so that the laptop here will recognize when this is attached, and when it is, it will only render things on this top half of the screen. And if I remove this, of course, it will then fill in the whole screen. It's off right now, so you can't see anything. And then I can completely unfold it, and if I get the right side, I can pull out the little kickstand. So I can stand this up, and of course the keyboard is Bluetooth, so I can still use the keyboard even when it's not magnetically attached, and it works beautifully. So this has become probably my favorite piece of tech. It's just really convenient to carry around, and it's not a tablet. It has the full computing power of an actual laptop. Not nearly as powerful as my ThinkPad, but it's a powerful laptop just the same. So Jeannie, hopefully that answers your question. I realize hopefully by now you've already made your choice, but I would love to know if that choice happened to be the Pixel that you went with and what you think, if that is, or whatever you chose, what you think. Next question is from somebody who asked me to keep the information private, so I'm going to respect that, of course. And so the question is, I don't know what I don't know, so the best I can do is turn down stuff that feels like I might screw it up. Where would you suggest someone go to learn more or fill in the gaps? I'm not asking you to pitch Bulletproof Bookkeeping, but maybe that's the solution, or maybe something else, like a certification. So let me start on certifications. I get them. I get why a lot of people want to have them. It puts credibility. You put these badges on your website, and it's really cool. For myself, I never cared about certifications. For a long time, I wasn't even certified in QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online. My feeling was when I need it, I'll get it, right? And I remember one day, many years ago, I was sitting down to get the certification. It was like on a Sunday. And so I'm going through, and it's a lot of questions. It takes a while to get through, and I'm thinking to myself, I have paying clients whose work I could be doing right now. And in those days, I was billing by the hour, so quite literally, I could be making money instead of not making money while trying to get certified. So that's kind of when it hit me, like, I'll get the certification when it becomes apparent that I need it in order to get the clients. But up to then, and even still today, I haven't found that I needed a certification to get clients. It's also great as a confidence booster if you need that. But this particular person who's asking, I happen to know, I've known for years, I don't think you need any certifications. I think what you want, what you need, which is what the certifications are meant to confirm that you have, is the experience and the knowledge that you understand the accounting and know how to use the tools. So would I suggest Bulletproof Bookkeeping? Absolutely. The Bulletproof Bookkeeping Mastery course was designed to be that core resource that will give you the general bookkeeping principles, right? And I wrote the course to be exactly that kind of resource. Then there's the community that's attached to it, where we have channels that are for specific industries. So if you're taking that course because you want that core foundation, but you also want to be able to get answers about industry-specific stuff, there's a place for that in the course. It's not in the course itself, because for industry-specific stuff, I do industry-specific courses like e-commerce or real estate brokers and so on. So I would think that the Bulletproof Bookkeeping Mastery course would be the perfect resource to sort of be at the center of your, resources in general, where you would go through that and learn what's in there. And I designed it to be, in addition to being a course that you would go through sequentially, I also designed it to be a course that was built with, mostly short, digestible lessons, so that it could be used as a reference tool. So even very experienced people have reflected back to me, because they've sort of seen me saying things online like, oh, if you're experienced, you can probably skip some of the earlier lessons that are just going over the basics, like all the lists and things. And I was told by somebody who's very experienced not to tell people that, because she shared with me that she actually, even though she was very experienced herself, learned a ton going through those lessons of mine, because she referred to my golden nuggets, which are things I often share in passing that might not be central to the material I'm teaching, but it'll just be something I'll mention that, she describes as being the kind of thing where she's like, oh, wait, stop, what was that? And she'll pause the video and go back over it, and it'll be, like the example she used years ago when she brought this up with me was I mentioned something about Google Keep, and she and her husband now use that every day. This is my friend Lisa that I'm talking about. I know she wouldn't mind me sharing her name. And she's a member of 97, as is the person asking this question, which brings me to the answer to the second question, which is, if I can squeeze in a second related question, I feel I should know more about tax than I do. I don't ever want to file tax, but there's probably some, quote, bookkeeper should know this, unquote. I have zero idea where to go for that. I would love to buy this knowledge for myself and the amazing bookkeeper I have starting next week, and so on. So my quick answer on that is, for many, many years, may he rest in peace, I had Barry Goldstein, who has very much been a mentor, and really, I often refer to him as like my second father. I've leaned on him over many years for a lot of kinds of advice, not just bookkeeping and accounting and tax, but especially when it came to any tax-related questions and how to handle the bookkeeping for it. I definitely deferred to him. So my first suggestion is get your Barry Goldstein in your life. Get somebody whose experience you really trust. Barry was, in business for many, many, many years as a CPA, built up a firm, sold it, went to work for the firm he sold to as one of their VPs of taxation. I trusted his experience with tax more than anybody else on this planet, quite frankly. If he was still around, I would still trust him more than anybody else on this planet. So get somebody like that, somebody who can mentor you, who you can lean on, who won't mind taking the time like Barry used to frequently do for me. Now, Barry and I shared a lot of clients, so that helped, but Barry was also the sort of guy that, he would take the time out. He was just that kind of person. And that brings me to 97 and up, where I'm not going to give you advice on how to handle tax issues, because it's not my core competency. I've never really worked in a capacity where I was being paid to do tax returns. In fact, the one experience I had working at a CPA firm where I was eventually asked to do tax returns, even though I told them in my job interview that I had zero experience doing it, I grew to hate it. I grew to hate it vehemently because there was no training. I was literally just thrown at it and told, here's an S-Corp, go do a tax return. And then I got reamed for making mistakes and not knowing how to do it properly. So hated it, still hate it to this day, don't want anything to do with it. But we have channels in our Slack workspace for the 97 and up community that are dedicated to tax questions. And I can pretty much guarantee you that, not from me, but there's lots of other experienced enrolled agents and CPAs in our group who will answer your questions and answer them well. Which brings up another question that you might be wondering. And based on this, I once asked the group, at the risk of shooting myself in the foot, so to speak, why 97 and up? Why not just go to Facebook groups, which are free and across the board? And these are not people who would just blow smoke up my ass. These are people who I can trust would be honest with me. And they all told me consistently that they felt that the quality of the experience being shared at 97 and up was superior to any Facebook group they'd ever been in. And, and it's sort of like you get what you pay for kind of thing. People aren't going to pay good money to be in a group like this unless there's value in it for them. And it was music to my ears hearing that answer. On some levels, I'll be honest, I was a little worried that maybe that would cause people to be encouraged to say, you know what, he's right. Why am I paying for 97 and up? I can just go to Facebook. So it was very pleasing to hear that answer. So that is that question. Let's go on to the next question. This one is from Terry, who's also a member of 97 and up. There seems to be a theme here. So far, all the questions have come from members, which is great. My newest desktop client's accountant is not automated in any way. In order to finish 2021 tax return, I sent them a trial balance, P&L. Remember, these were questions that are going back quite a few months. So I sent him a trial balance, P&L, and balance sheet. He sent my client the following. Number one, make this long journal entry to get back to my balance sheet, and profit and loss was as of 12/31/21. P.S. Debits don't equal credits. That's great. Then number two, entries to convert to cash basis tax return. After printing out balance sheet and P&L, reverse all of these entries. Debit equal credit on this one. I have never been asked to do anything other than a few adjusting entries for depreciation. What do you make of this? Okay, so what I make of that one is that I actually have a whole video that I forget the exact title, but I'll get it linked up in the notes. And I have a template for this that's based on how to get your books into agreement with the tax return. Anytime I get a new client, that's the first thing I do. That's the first thing you should do. The first thing you should do when you get a new client is, as you're gathering all the documents, one of them should be the last return that they filed. In fact, when new clients fill out my onboarding questionnaire, that's one of the questions, is give me the date of the last return you filed, so I know exactly what to ask for when I get to that. And I want that return, and then my trial balance template lets you dump the trial balance that's in QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online into my template, and then you kind of key in the corresponding numbers off the tax return. There's a bit of a process there. Obviously, it doesn't all line up perfectly, so you have to know your way around a tax return, but my video helps you with that. And then this template of mine will kind of calculate the debits and credits needed to get the books in perfect agreement with the tax return. That is very important. It's one of the first things every CPA or enrolled agent will or should do when they first get the statements from you. Before they go to prepare the returns, they need to verify that they have the right starting balance. For them to file a tax return, the equity section is the equivalent of the starting balance that's used, the equivalent to doing a bank rec where you need the right starting balance from the prior month. They need the right starting balance from the prior year, specifically in the equity section. They need to know that retained earnings ties out before they can move forward. Now, some accountants will just do the adjustment for you, and they're probably billing for it. Others will do as was apparently done here. So what I make of this, first of all, the journal entry they sent, the debit should equal the credit, so I would immediately kick it back to them and say, hey, this doesn't add up, number one. Number two, the question doesn't say what format you got it in, but I would definitely insist on getting it in a spreadsheet. Excel or Google Sheets works. It will make it much easier for you as the bookkeeper to be able to work with that information and get those entries posted and do what you need to do there. And then you'll do a reversal, so you're booking the entry on 12/31/21, or maybe even 22 by now for some people, and you'll reverse that entry, but you have to be careful as you're going through the reversal. You're not going to reverse all of it. You're only going to reverse things that are based on timing differences. So let's say you had to adjust the bank balance because they had a different balance on their tax return than what QuickBooks showed. They may be going by the actual statement balance, whereas you might be properly reconciling, and the register balance or QuickBooks balance may reflect like uncleared checks, something like that. So those are timing differences. You don't want to leave that there because it'll create a permanent difference. So you do need to reverse those things. But you don't want to reverse the whole thing. Things that you end up booking as part of that process, like depreciation, that needs to stay. So my video will help you go through all this. Like I said, I'll get it linked up in the notes so you have it. But that, in essence, is my quick answer to your question. And now we will move on to the next one. Okay, next question. So this is from Doug Lee. Doug says, hey Seth, I'm enjoying going through your e-commerce course. I like your style of teaching. I'm thinking of creating content aimed at e-commerce owners and would like to create interest with content from the course, but was wondering if you can give me an example of how much content to use from the course without stepping across the line. Hope you know what I mean. Of course I do. So it's a great question because, the truth is anything I'm teaching you about e-commerce is, well, in my case, I kind of stumbled through it and figured it out on my own. Anybody who went through the 6-video series that kind of gives you all the background for the course itself, you heard my story where I had a client kind of force me into it. So I will say this, anything I'm teaching you, I figured out on my own, but it's not unique, right? I'll be the first one to tell you, like the process I'm teaching you for using clearing accounts and all this, it's not, I didn't make that up. Somebody else came up with it long before I did. So it's very unlikely that anything you're learning is truly original. The difference might be in how I teach it, right? And one of the things I learned from a book I was studying, I think it was year before last, it's called How to Take Smart Notes, and it's really about doing research and how to take good notes and keep good notes and how to link things up properly. It's based on something called the Zettelkasten technique or system or whatever they call it. where you're doing research, you're taking notes, and as you write up a note on one topic and you know there's a related topic elsewhere in your notes, you just link them up and you create this like incredible knowledge base using this system. It's something I still plan to continue studying so that I can, let's put it this way, I wouldn't dare teach it to you yet because I don't know it well enough to teach it. But if you want to learn something and you want to make sure and confirm your understanding of it is thorough and solid at the foundation, then learn how to teach it. That's something I grew up. My mother was a teacher. That's where I believe I get a lot of it from, and not that I sat in her classes and learned how she taught. But I think just living with a mother growing up who was a teacher, I just kind of picked up on a lot of, her personality traits that made her a good teacher. And I learned how to explain things in a way that, I could understand them really well. And that's the feedback I consistently get. So as far as, if you're worried about like sort of plagiarizing, well, here's the bottom line of this. And this is what I got out of the How to Take Smart Notes book, which is, if you want to really confirm you're understanding something, you'd better be able to explain it to somebody else in your own words, right? So, Doug, that's kind of my answer to you ultimately is, have at it. Take everything you learn out of this course. I hope you learn everything it teaches so well that you're able to create your own version of the course and teach it to somebody else. But make it your own. Again, you should be able to rewrite something or re-explain something verbally in your own words, as opposed to just parroting what you read or heard in the original form where you got it, right? So I don't have a monopoly on this stuff. There's lots of people who understand e-commerce accounting very well. Truth be told, when I looked around at some of the quote-unquote competition to see what was out there, most of the e-commerce courses I saw didn't really cover the whole entire e-commerce accounting flow. Most of them just covered an app, like how to use WebGility or how to use Shopify. And in my mind, that's not an e-commerce course. That's just a course on an app. So I made it a specific point to design a course here that focused more on the accounting fundamentals and principles. And yeah, of course, by necessity, I'm talking about apps, but my core focus is not on the apps. My feeling is if you really understand the accounting, it should be easy for you to figure out how to use the apps to accomplish what you now understand you need to in the accounting, right? So to me, a course that's simply teaching you the mechanics of how to use Shopify or WebGility or whatever, not that useful in my opinion, right? And I'm giving you my opinion based on my experience. So Doug, have at it. I would love to see what you've come up with once you've come up with it. And especially since you're talking about really targeting a different audience. My target audience for these courses primarily are other accountants and bookkeepers who want to learn this stuff so they can serve their clients. Granted, lots of business owners end up coming in here because they want to learn it so they can do it themselves and understand it so that when they hire somebody, they can look over that person's shoulder and make sure that they can confirm that that person knows what they're doing. But by all means, I'm flattered, honestly, that you would defer to my content on this. But like I said, just take anything I've done, rewrite it in your own words, and it's yours. It's yours to have. It's yours to share. That's my kind of 2 cents or 10 cents worth on that one. Last question comes from my friend Alexa. This one is very recent as of this recording because I just released my article that I can show you right on my screen here on backing up your QuickBooks Online data to Airtable. Let me back up. So if I click here, by the way, that actually just takes me out to the main blog feed. And so back down here is my recent post on Airtable, backing up client history from QuickBooks Online to Airtable. And it shows you a pretty slick, in my opinion, of course, but pretty slick process for how you can take data out of QuickBooks Online. It would work for desktop as well, and stick it in Airtable so that, especially in the case where I wanted to set up a client with a new company file and their complaint about it is I don't want to lose access to especially to my client history where I can see what I've invoiced them and so on and so forth. This is a way of being able to show them. It may even be, I'd argue in some respects, a better way than QuickBooks own reporting process itself, where you could archive the data so I could give them the assurance that they would have access to the data that they need, while at the same time we can start a brand new clean QuickBooks Online file, get it set up, do it right, nice and clean without all the garbage that may have accumulated in the existing file over the years. So that's just a quick bit of context on what Alexa is referring to in her question. She says, just watched Airtable as a backup to Cubio. Very cool. You mentioned you had done some videos on using Airtable for accounting. Can you point me to those? I have the nonprofit with a fiscal sponsors, so no QBO. I've been tracking expenses in Airtable and then Google Drive for the P&L. Would love to get it all into one Airtable. Thanks in advance. Well, Alexa, let me show you this. Let's go to my YouTube channel. And we'll go to my actual channel. So I always forget. There it is, your channel. How about that? For you, you can just go to youtube.com/nerdenterprises. And now we're going to, if you search using this guy here, you want to be careful. If I search up here, I'm doing a global search on all of YouTube. If you want to search a particular channel, you're looking for this magnifying glass here. Let's search Airtable. And I've got a ton. So here's tracking inventory, accounting for startups, inventory, real estate brokers, contractors, track anything for your business, track customers, projects, and tasks, the ultimate bookmarking system, Airtable for accounting and bookkeeping firms. Now, this is not to track the actual accounting. One of the comments in here was funny. I got blasted by this guy, for not actually showing him how to use it for accounting. And I was like, well, that's not really the purpose of this video. I have another one for that. But this would be interesting if you wanted to use Airtable to manage your whole accounting or bookkeeping firm. This shows you what that looks like. Another one on bookmarking, your educational resources, how to build a library for your bank feed rules, the very one I was just talking about, and boom. It may actually be this. I think I retitled it, as you can see here, Accounting for Startups. It's part of my Accounting for Startups series, which is a bigger picture thing. But this one, Accounting for Startups with Airtable, actually shows you how to set up Airtable and use it to track your accounting. So I'll get this linked up in my answers. And that's our final question for this week. So please get over into my guide to the galaxy and bang this Ask Nerd button and ask your questions. I would love to have new questions coming in every week, to do new videos every week answering your questions. It's really simple. You ask the questions and I answer them. If I've had the experience, you're welcome to it. If I don't have the experience, I'll tell you I don't have the experience with this. And then I'll make every effort to reach out to somebody who might have that experience. So one way or the other, I will get you the answers you need. Just use the Ask Nerd form and I'll get back to you. At this point, I'll do this every week. So I'll get back to you within a week at the latest with a new video answering your questions.